Hello, my name is Madeline Endries, and I'm a PhD student at the University of Michigan. Today, I'll be presenting our paper, which is Debugging with Stack Overflow, Web Search Behavior in Novice and Expert Programmers. And in this paper, we compare how novice and expert programmers use Google search to find helpful information on Stack Overflow. Now, before we dive in, I want to introduce my co-authors who really made this work possible. In particular, I want to introduce and shout out our first author, Annie, who is unfortunately not able to be here today. When working on this research, Annie was actually an undergraduate at Michigan, and in fact, she just graduated this spring. This work is her first author publication, and I'm incredibly proud of all of the hard effort she put into this research. Okay, so with introductions out of the way, let's start to establish our motivation. Debugging is hard for both novice and expert programmers. As a result, many programmers turn to online resources such as Stack Overflow for help. However, finding debugging help online isn't exactly easy either, especially for novices. Now, to be able to see this a little bit more clearly, to really illustrate the role expertise can play in finding debugging help online, let's take a look at a tale of two programmers. Let's say we have two different programmers who are faced with the same buggy Python program. In this case, the program throws a syntax error because it uses an exclamation mark instead of the keyword not, which is what is used for negation in Python. Now, unable to fix their program on their own, let's say we have two different programmers who both turn to Stack Overflow for help. For our first programmer, while they're new to Python, they are an expert at C. When searching for a helpful Stack Overflow post, they paste portions of the error message and add programming-related keywords such as Python and operator. Additionally, they jump around in the Google search results, not always clicking the top link as indicated by the search rank column on the slide. In particular, during their last query, they actually click on two different links, one that's ranked first and one that's actually ranked 8th on the page. Now, from this first search, in fact, from this 8th ranked link on the Google search page, the expert C programmer is able to find a helpful Stack Overflow post, and they correctly fix the error. Now, let's take a look at programmer 2. Unlike programmer 1, programmer 2 is a novice not only at Python, but also at programming in general. Like programmer 1, programmer 2 creates a series of web search queries to try and find help. However, programmer 2 does not copy portions of the error message, and they use much more general language. Furthermore, they always click the first search result, and sometimes they don't even click any of the search results. Programmer 2 also finds a Stack Overflow post that they think is going to be helpful. However, the key word here is think, because the post they identify does not actually contain relevant debugging information, and programmer 2 is unable to correctly fix the error. Now, this example isn't just some random example that I've made up. It's actually adapted from a real example that we observe in our experiment, and this sort of example motivates our main research questions. Now, our main research questions are as follows. First of all, while previous studies have shown that expertise plays a role in Stack Overflow search efficacy, we are interested in determining how large that role is for different types of programming expertise, such as language-specific and general expertise. And we are also really interested in investigating this in as close to an ecologically valid manner as we can. Additionally, we are interested in what features of search query formation correlate with expertise and may lead to finding better online debugging help. Answering these questions could both inform developer training, so that's the sort of training that we might use to help teach novices or programmers how to search for helpful information online, but it could also help researchers design the next generation of tools that support online help search. Okay, now that we have explored our motivation and research goal, let's move on to our experimental design. This design is for trying to understand this role of expertise in Stack Overflow search. Now, like with any human study, first we had to recruit participants. we recruited participants at 3 different programming experience levels. First, we had programming novices who had 1 year or less of programming experience in any programming language. Second, we had non-familiar Python experts who were experts in that they had at least 3 years of general programming experience, but had at most 1 year of Python experience. Now, finally, we had Python familiar experts who had both at least 3 years of general programming experience and also over a year of Python experience. Recruiting participants from these 3 levels allows us to investigate both the impact of general programming experience and also the impact of language-specific experience on the efficacy of Stack Overflow search. Overall, we recruited 40 participants, half of which were women and half men. These participants included 11 programming novices, 9 non-familiar Python experts, and 20 Python familiar experts. For all of these participants, we had them look at a set of buggy Python stimuli, which were randomly selected from our stimuli corpus. Each stimulus in our corpus consisted of a buggy Python program, such as the one that you saw in the introduction motivating example earlier, and an associated error message. Stimuli were generated from real buggy Python programs that were submitted to Python Tutor, a free online Python interpreter that has been used in many prior research projects. The stimuli were largely chosen at random, though we did have some conditions regarding wanting to have a variety of different error message and error types so we could compare the results for different error messages together. For each stimulus, participants were asked to use Google search to search for the relevant debugging help on Stack Overflow. Now, by allowing participants to use Google, which is actually the most preferred search engine for most developers, our design has higher ecological validity than previous work, which often will have like a fixed page from the Stack Overflow search result or ask participants to search directly in Stack Overflow. For each stimulus, the participant had at most 10 minutes to find a helpful post, and each full session lasted an hour. So the participants would have stimuli after stimuli during that session. If they found a helpful post for any given stimulus, they were asked to report the link of the post and what part of the posts they found helpful. They were also asked how they would fix the error in the given program, so we could establish basically a ground truth to see if our participants were successful at their debugging endeavors. All debugging sessions were screen recorded, and we then annotated the results by multiple authors for our analysis. Okay, so now that we've really gone through our motivating example and also our design, we get to the fun part. What did we find? So we organize our analysis around 3 different research questions. The first research question is really our primary research question, but this one is interested in how does general program experience or language-specific experience relate to successfully selecting helpful Stack Overflow posts. So we call this research question our post relevance question. After that, our second research question involves browsing features. So we're interested in like what specific features of browsing behavior correlate with this programming experience. And this might help inform training going forward. And finally, we're also interested in error type differences. So in particular, we're interested in if debugging performance with Stack Overflow differs by Python error type. That is it easier to find help with Stack Overflow for some error types than others? This might also influence training, but also influence the design of future automated tools for supporting Stack Overflow search. Okay, so for research question 1, does programming experience correlate with Stack Overflow search efficacy? What did we find? We found that the answer is yes. In fact, it's a fairly resounding yes. We find a significant moderate-sized effect where P is 0.035. Now, to get into a little bit more specific details, we find that Python familiar experts are most likely to be able to find relevant posts, followed by non-Python familiar experts. Novices, on the other hand, are the least likely to be able to find a helpful post. Now, this difference was significant with P equals 0.035, and it had a moderate-sized effect. Now, one thing that I think is really interesting here is we notice that both Python familiar experts and non-Python familiar experts are better than novices. Even though the Python familiar experts were the most effective, there does seem to be some role of general programming expertise in helping people find information online that's code related, basically. Overall, this finding indicates that novices improve their Stack Overflow search skills over time, a finding that builds upon and confirms previous work. This is also important because it shows that this is a skill that people learn over time, and thus it's a skill that can probably be taught. To the best of my knowledge, it's not currently a super common skill that's taught in intra-CS courses. It's more of something that students are expected to kind of pick up along the way. However, it may be that having some more designated training for this sort of code search ability might actually be really helpful for students. Additionally, we find that both general and language-specific programming expertise facilitate Stack Overflow search efficacy. That means it might be even that like language-agnostic Google code search could really help novices find online help. So definitely it seems like language-specific skills are helpful, but honestly, just keeping like this sort of thing in a more general curriculum might also be helpful. Finally, we observed that our results for finding a helpful snippet, which we define as like the part of the page or the part of the Stack Overflow post that the novice or the participant found helpful, these results are actually really similar to those for finding an overall post that is helpful. This result indicates that programming expertise related differences are driven primarily by browsing behavior for finding a relevant post rather than within post differences. So this might mean that training or future tools may benefit by primarily focusing on this search sort of process rather than selecting a helpful bit from a relevant snippet of the post. Okay, so now that we've kind of covered our first research question, let's move on to research question 2, which investigates which browsing behavior features correlate with basically the efficacy of someone's Stack Overflow search. Now, I'm going to go through this research question fairly quickly for the sake of time, but overall, we find evidence that experience-related differences in Stack Overflow search efficacy are connected primarily to differences in how programmers select links from the search results. So this is really like that first phase of looking for helpful information on Stack Overflow. In particular, experts tend to click more search results further down the search page than they do novices. So basically, we found that the big connection is how someone searches for a post once they've already made their search query, rather than necessarily the search query itself. However, that being said, we also observed limited evidence that query construction features, such as query length, might facilitate some expertise-related differences. If you are interested in learning more about this, there are additional details in our paper. However, it may be that we need future research to investigate more query-specific features and how they could influence a Stack Overflow search. Okay, now for our third research question and final research question. Beyond expertise differences in search efficacy and browsing behavior, we are also interested in if Stack Overflow search efficacy is mediated by the Python error type. This knowledge could both help design future code search training as well as automated tools that use Stack Overflow posts. Now for this research question, we find that the answer is also yes. And it's yes in a way that is statistically significant. Now up on the screen, I have a table which shows more of our detailed results. And it kind of breaks down the different Python error types from our stimuli. Now, for some error types, such as indentation error, we find that they're both easy to find a relevant and helpful post on Stack Overflow, but they're also relatively easy bugs to fix. So these might be the sort of bugs that, while an automated tool or training might be helpful in that Stack Overflow can provide relevant posts, these are also just generally easier errors, so they might not want to be the focus of any sort of training. Now, there's other error types, though, such as attribute errors, which have a high rate of finding a Stack Overflow post, kind of like the indentation error, but these errors are generally harder than the indentation errors. So these types of errors might be a good place for Stack Overflow training because it's a place where Stack Overflow posts could really be leveraged to find help for slightly more challenging errors. There are other error types, however, such as general syntax errors that are both hard to find relevant posts for and are easy to fix. This may be because syntax errors in Python are really broad. The same error can be caused by a diverse multitude of different mistakes. And additionally, this might make it harder to find a Stack Overflow post that's relevant to the cause of a specific bug. So what does this all mean? We found that programmers are more likely to find helpful information for certain error types, such as attribute errors, and less likely for others, such as syntax errors. This can help design future code search training by encouraging Stack Overflow use for those error types that it's going to be the most helpful. However, these results may also impact the design of automated tools. Just as humans find some errors easier to debug using Stack Overflow, the same actually could be true of automated tools, especially those that are based on mined user data. Future tools may want to focus on providing help for those error types for which it has the highest chance of providing helpful information. Okay, so with that, I'm going to just go to our conclusion. Overall, we conducted a study of 40 different programmers at various experience levels to understand the impact of general and language-specific expertise on Stack Overflow search. We find a moderate-sized effect of expertise on search efficacy. And in particular, we find that both language-specific and general expertise play a role in this sort of search efficacy. Finally, we additionally looked at some features that might correlate with this expertise difference. And we found that experts tend to click more search results and click results further down the page than do novices. Finally, we found that Stack Overflow was more helpful for some Python error types than others, a finding that may impact future automated tool development. Overall, our results provide evidence for the design of future Google code search training and the design of future automated tools. Our replication package is available on the project GitHub page. Thank you.